we can shape a new agenda for education management information system to support decision-making and advance the sustainable development goal on education. My name is Boran Shakrun. I'm the director for the Division of Policy and Lifelong Learning Systems at UNESCO headquarters, and I'll be moderating this opening session. Before I come to presenting the eminent speakers in the opening session, I would like to remind you that this is a 3 days event. My colleague later will be presenting the detailed agenda and the organization of the event. This event is a knowledge sharing event, is a peer learning event, but it's also an agenda setting event. And I would like to highlight 3 points that are important for us to consider. The first one is that there are high expectations related to education management information system to advance education goals. Second, there is a need for raising the political stakes of education management information system, and that means attention from the policymakers, from the teacher community, but from the wider public as well. And third, there is a need for enhancing the international cooperation and collaboration around education management information system, and that's what we will be discussing as well as part of the meeting today. So let me just move to the opening session, and we have the pleasure to have 3 eminent speakers today with us. We'll hear from Madame Stefania Giannini, who is the Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO headquarters. She has been a Minister of Education in Italy and a Senator in the Parliament in Italy, but she has been also a lead of many initiatives related to education. We'll hear also from Alice Albright, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Partnership for Education. She has been working in the field for over 30 years. She's leading, of course, the work of the Global Partnership for Education and the action that are taking, particularly this year, regarding the replenishment for the Global Partnership for Education. Last and not least, I have the pleasure to welcome also Mr. Chen Day, Senior Vice President of Wedong Cloud Education Group, Chairman of Demos Group, and President of Brest Business School. Let me first start with Ms. Stefania Giannini, and we will listen to and hear her introductory speech. Please.
It's my great pleasure to welcome you to UNESCO's seminar on reimagining the futures of education management information systems, EMIS, so to say. Over the next 3 days, you will attend important conversations about the management of educational data. Now more than ever, let me say, data is defining the educational landscape. Data is valuable to every person at every level of an education system, from students to teachers, from school principals to planning officers. Planning without data is a bit like flying blind. UNESCO reports that 1 year into the pandemic, 24 million learners are today at risk of dropping out, and over 100 million will fall below minimum reading proficiency. We need data to see this learning loss, mitigate it, prevent it from accumulating. Improving educational data is a condition for achieving SDG 4, essential condition. It's a priority for UNESCO and its Institute for Statistics, the official international source of cross-nationally comparable data on education, as you know. Together with the Global Partnership for Education, we organized a conference in 2018 that identified the key challenges to building strong and sustainable EMIS. The COVID-19 crisis has revealed that more collective action is needed to make EMIS more robust and more adapted to the age of big data. The nature of both data and education are quickly and constantly evolving and changing. Many systems face challenges trying to keep up with frontier technologies like AI and blockchain, just to mention some of them. The pandemic has been a kind of wake-up call to the need for an integrated EMIS that is resilient even in the event of a crisis. The dramatic expansion of distance and hybrid learning programs showed that information systems in many countries were unprepared to support teaching, to support learning and monitoring during school closures. This is a challenge that we are still facing. With this realization, it's high time to develop an EMIS community of practice that ensures inclusion and equity in education, the collection of data on vulnerable and marginalized learners, and the improvement of learning outcomes. This requires strong political will, sustained commitment from member states and the international community. Our tools to track education must be up to the task of responding to changing times. Together, during this seminar, we'll proactively plan for more resilient, integrated, and innovative EMIS. We are just getting the conversation started, of course. Let's learn from each other and be inspired by each other to enable progress towards our global goal on education. I thank you very much.
Merci à Madame Stefania Giannini.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Giannini, ADG for Education. May I give the floor to Ms. Alice Albright, Director General for the Global Partnership for Education. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Dear friends and colleagues, I'd like to start by thanking UNESCO for hosting this very important event. I'm so glad that the conversations on data systems over the next few days can build on the important work that GPE and UNESCO initiated in Paris in 2018 with the launch of the first International Conference on Education Management Information Systems. It is indeed encouraging to see the strong technical partnership built by GPE and UNESCO flourishing as we work together with the broad cross-section of stakeholders around the virtual table today. The COVID-19 pandemic has illustrated the need to work in partnership to solve problems. Between April and October of last year, GPE approved close to $500 million in COVID-19 accelerated grants to 66 countries and another $25 million for a global grant to UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank. 24 of the country grants provided support to data-related activities in GPE's partner countries, such as support to establish an instant data collection instrument in Burundi and support for efforts to build evidence around the efficacy of radio lessons in Zambia. The global grant funded cross-country evidence-building initiatives, including important work by UNESCO on monitoring, evidence, learning, and preparation for future emergencies. As countries around the globe continue to develop strategies to address the consequences of COVID, one thing is clear and certain. Successful recovery will require strong data systems. It is important to look beyond the pandemic to explore how to leverage data systems to build more resilient education systems. Improving data and evidence will open up many opportunities to enhance implementation, highlight important lessons, undertake course corrections, and even to leapfrog many of the previous barriers to quality and inclusive education. For this, it is critical that policymakers have evidence-based insights into current policy and practice. This is why data and evidence are central to GPE's new strategy, GPE 2025, and to our new operating model. We see both as being key enablers of system transformation. Following the positive experience of the Education Data Solutions Roundtable in 2018 to 2019, we look forward to exploring how we can join forces with new partners, particularly in the business and foundation community. I want to conclude once again by thanking UNESCO for hosting this very timely and important event. I look forward to hearing the outcomes of your conversations and to our ongoing work together to support partner countries as they use data and evidence to help strengthen their education systems over the long term. Thank you very much, and I wish you well.
Thank you to Alice Albright for inspiring words. And of course, in the conference, we'll hear from other colleagues from the Global Partnership for Education. Let me now turn to Mr. Dai Shen, Senior Vice President of Weidong Cloud Education Group. Please, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que je peux partager mon écran?
Thank you very much. I'd just like to share my screen. Good afternoon, Mrs. Giannini. I'd like to say hello to UNESCO and to partners. Weidong Education is honored and delighted to be invited to take part in this conference and to be able to share our experience in education management information systems. This is a very important topic, as the two former speakers have just said. Data collection is extremely important in the management of future education. Weidong Cloud Education is a Chinese company. Weidong Cloud is also a leader in education, not just in China, but also in Europe and Africa. We offer various solutions to support countries in designing their education, professional education systems. And we advise on the use of data, as well as all of the platforms to manage information. We also work with all of the IT side of things. We benefit from the experience of our various groups in Europe, as well as our business school in the town of Brest, in fundamental research for the use of data. In Brest Business School, for example, there are teachers who carry out research in big data and artificial intelligence. Since the start of the pandemic, e-learning and remote education has become a global ecosystem. So each education provider takes part in the construction of this ecosystem. Weidong Education has the pleasure of being a partner with UNESCO to launch the Global Partnership for Education, and so we've worked in China as well as in Asian and African countries where we have we have seen how useful it is to use data to analyze the relevance and the efficiency of education systems, and also to verify return on investment. On this face-to-face training, as well as remote training and everything that's stored in the cloud, it's particularly important to have a very efficient data analysis system. Weidong Education has worked with its partners in the past 5 years to devise a comprehensive system for training, for course content, as well as certification, and also to work with customers on data collection, data analysis, and also to help our clients to use this data in order to make the best decisions when they invest in training and education. Here you can see that the various data are collected in various education projects. Then they are centralized, they are analyzed, and then we produce the reports that show the efficiency of education action but it also helps our partners to make the best decisions thereafter. This can be done at the level of a city, a region, and even at national level. For example, in China, we have worked with the Town Hall of Beijing, as well as Sichuan and Qingdao. So information systems really help make good decisions in education using data collection from all of the school, which has been digitized. And then we can have information on the learning behavior of students, which then helps decision makers and training specialists to improve their digital education methods. Now, we know that digital education is not just a copy of face-to-face education. It entails a whole different way of teaching and a different way of learning for students as well. It's very important to have a good connection between infrastructure in the schools, in the classrooms, in the campuses, as well as the cloud infrastructure, which is really vital. You've got virtual and physical data centers. Weidong Education has its own data center in Qingdao. We also work with our customers' data center in Beijing, Guizhou, and other cities in China. Data security and the protection of confidential data is key because it contains data about the students themselves, about teachers, and about parents as well, because parents, of course, play a key role in the education of their children. This enables administrations to analyze data and then to come up with the best solution. Here's a case study in Africa, in a developing country. So this dovetails with UNESCO's Priority Africa. We've worked with the government of Côte d'Ivoire to design an education strategy for vocational education and to help young craftsmen to acquire new skills. Contained in this project, there's a physical component because we're going to build a campus with face-to-face training, with workshops, with stores that are going to be physical and remote. So through this physical network, we've also built a data center for the government of Côte d'Ivoire in order to carry out a census of the various sectors of craftsmanship in the country. We've also carried out an inventory of the people working in these sectors. This data is then used to fill in this system. There are 6 million people working in the sector of craftsmanship. So this is one practical example of how the EMIS system can be used. It helps decision makers. It also helps funders to invest well in education and training, which is absolutely key for all countries. In the fight against COVID, and in order to succeed in post-COVID recovery, but also to help future generations to have the best education possible. You have 1 minute remaining, says Boren Shakrun. Well, I am done.
Important presentation and connecting aspect related to education, information and data, and skills and the economic development. I think it gives the holistic perspective. Dear colleagues, thank you very much for joining us for this opening session. Let me give now the floor to my colleague Guangchul Chang, Chief of Education Policy Section, to present the event and the conference, and also set a bit the scene for our discussion during the 3 days. Over to you, JC.
Thank you, Boren. Dear colleagues, participants. So as you know, this seminar is focusing on the topic of reimagining the future of education management information systems, EMIS, more particularly on the need to look beyond head counts in order to leverage data systems to support inclusive and effective learning for all. In this connection, I'd like to borrow a word cloud from the UNESCO Institute for Statistics, UIS, which conducted a survey of COVID-19 pandemic impacts on national education planning units between July and September 2020. The survey explored the changes implemented to education variables or new variables added to previous data collections. As you can see in the slide, the most frequent terms for the first variable show the emphasis on monitoring attendance and remote learning. Among another most frequent term was the size of the classroom in square meters in data collections to support policies for social distancing and others. Finally, the crowd word for all variables indicate the students were the focus of variable adaptations for data collection, followed by schools and staff. I found this cloud word provides a glimpse of what shifts have been made and what will be emphasized in the future of education system management and what may drive and shape the future EMIS. In 2018, UNESCO and GPE hosted an international seminar that explored the major trends driving the evolution of EMIS. Key challenges across different countries and contexts were discussed at that time, and 6 factors driving the evolution of EMIS were then identified, as seen in the slide. The keywords were then availability of technology, monitoring of SDGs, complexity of education systems, EMIS role to support planning, monitoring, and evaluation, accountability, and focus on learning outcomes. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has served as a window to frame this seminar, has emphasized the importance of other variables, such as attendance, remote learning, health, social distancing, with the students at the core of the information system. These variables led us to add to the previous list. One is real-time data. Second is learning facilitation. The pandemic was a wake-up call to existing holes and misalignments that make many EMIS unprepared to continuously inform effective education management. With the expansion of distance and hybrid learning programs, EMIS in many countries were unprepared to reach beyond the walls of the school building. COVID-19 further blurred the lines between the responsibilities of different sectors, information systems, such as health, labor market, and social security. The need for an integrated EMIS, both vertically across levels of education systems and horizontally across different education functions, departments, and social sectors, is more apparent now than ever before. Now, with the international spotlight on data broadly and EMIS specifically, it is a high time to stimulate dialogue on the relevance and future directions of our data systems in the education sector, including through peer learning, collaboration, and the establishment of international community of EMIS practice that engages in reimagining the future EMIS. Such EMIS will be called up more than ever to serve as a relevant, timely, and useful tool to ensure continuity of teaching and learning, inclusion and equity in education, the timely collection of data, including on vulnerable and marginalized learners, and eventually the improvement of learning outcomes for all. The COVID-19 crisis highlighted the shortcomings and challenges of EMIS to help government ensure the continuous management and monitoring of learning for all, inclusion and equity. Education data and indicators are needed for immediate use to monitor and respond to constantly evolving situations. Often, EMIS was not suited for that purpose. The effects of these challenges on EMIS can be organized around 4 dimensions of data quality: timeliness, relevance and completeness, accessibility and use, and lastly, interoperability and adaptability. Currently, often EMIS lack real-time data on students and teachers that can help decision-making about urgent educational needs, such as school closures, distance hybrid learning, dropout risk management, learning loss prevention, safe return to schools, and others. EMIS also lack agility and adaptability to respond to provide data on all children, especially vulnerable learners, and extend beyond the school building to monitor distance learning participation. Third, EMIS lack strong open data culture and data literacy due to lack of frequent and user-friendly data use and the low capacity of data analysis. Lastly, EMIS lack coordination and linkages with other data systems, as I said earlier, such as health, household, finance, assessment, to ensure the well-being and the learning continuity of all and also their families. In light of the lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis, we may think of 2 groups of considerations, which are the 2 sides of the same coin for our reflection on the future EMIS. The first is about systemic considerations, which are the necessary conditions for building an enabling environment for the future EMIS. Second group is around the technical considerations to leverage what new technologies can offer in order to overcome the shortcomings of the conventional EMIS. We should consider several aspects such as a framework for sound policy and legal framework for digital transformation of education management in line with the overall government digital strategies, culture of data-informed decision-making, adequate and sustainable funding to ensure implementation. Capacity for development of institutional and technical capacities in line with the requirements of future EMIS, such as data management, cloud-based computing, data literacy, advanced data analytics, and others. And importantly, developing local ecosystems for sustainability. So third, for data coordination, for use of unique student and teacher IDs and harmonized method and standards that enable interoperability and connectiveness, integration of data with non-education sectors, automated data collection, validation, and analysis. Lastly, flexible learning. COVID-19 has shown that education can take place everywhere. Therefore, there is need to enable EMIS to monitor and record learning that is happening through more diverse and flexible learning paths. Globally, there is a growing concern and interest in digitizing government services, including in the education sector. The COVID-19 crisis presented the untapped potential of technologies that can transform EMIS into more elaborate information systems that can track each individual in the education system rather than collecting merely head counts at school level. We need to seriously consider some of the key frontier technologies that could transform EMIS, such as big data, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and non-education data system integration. This list is not exhaustive, and according to our agenda, we'll discuss it further during tomorrow's session. Over the next 3 days, we'll have conversations about the key principles of future EMIS. During day 3 of this seminar, we'll discuss how a community of practice could be established and undertaken to collaborate towards the shared goal of transforming EMIS for better learning for all. This international community of practice may be comprised of education planners and managers, development partners, IT experts, statistics and the learning analytics experts, and the civil society and private sector partners. The proposed objectives of this COP are presented in those slides for further discussion during this seminar, which is about standard setting for future MEs, knowledge generation and dissemination, sharing of best practices for mutual learning, facilitating IT development and connectivity, and importantly, also capacity development and supporting the EMS transformation path and the local ecosystems. UNESCO will compile your views, participants' views and suggestions on the key principles of future MEs during this seminar, which will guide the formation of work strands of the planned international community of MEs practice. The key principles may be, as you can see in the slide, around the open and complete inclusive data, interoperability and by integration, bias-free algorithms, data privacy and legal ownership, affordability and accessibility, and scalability and sustainability. And also importantly focus on local ecosystems and capacity development. The draft working paper that we prepared is online, and the link will be shared now via the chat room unless it is already done. And our discussions and joint efforts to build this community of practice will be reflected in the final paper following this conference. Lastly, as I said earlier, this seminar is structured over 3 days, each day focusing on three distinctive aspects. The day one today will focus on what we learn from the crisis, and tomorrow, day two, we'll discuss about how we do envision our future MEs, and then the last day, day three, we will discuss about what is required to do for us to transition from today to the future. You can see in the slide the overview of today's session, and we have already the opening remarks by distinguished delegates and representatives. And then we will now discuss about today, focusing on experiences and lessons learned from both national and partners' perspective. Thank you for your attention. Now, without further delay, we are going now to the first session of today. And this session will be facilitated by Nicolas Roche. Nicolas is the Senior Advisor Education at UNICEF, team leader for the sector planning, innovation, data, and evidence for result team based at UNICEF New York headquarters. He has 25 years of experience in statistics, planning, and education sector analysis and development, who will be moderating the first session, which is focused on lessons learned and future prospects from the country's perspective. Thank you very much. Nicolas.
Thank you, GC, for the introduction. I hope everybody can hear me well. Thanks for the introduction. I would like to say first that I'm really honored to moderate the first session, because I think that over the last couple of months, we've been talking about reimagining the education, but probably, letting rooms for reimagining education monitoring information systems. So I'm really glad that my colleague in UNESCO, together with other agencies, other partners, bring this issue on the table for further reflection. And this session, as GC mentioned, will really focus on country experience. So for this session, I have today with me 5 panelists who will drive us in their respective experience from a country perspective. The first one who will talk is Mrs. Li Yanli, who is Director for the Department of Development in the Ministry of Education in China, and she will present us the EMIS and decision-making experience in the education system in China. Then we will have Mrs. Leticia Miraz, who is Director of Educational Information in the National Ministry of Education, Argentina. She's a sociologist, information specialist, and also a professor in university and researcher, and she will drive us in the experience of Argentina during the pandemic. Then we will have Mr. Hussein Abdul Hamid, who is Senior Education Specialist and Education Statistics Coordinator at the World Bank. His presentation will focus on EMIS and education in emergencies, so EMIS during emergencies. And then we will go and have the experience of Uzbekistan from Mr. Abdullayev Alisher, who is the head of ICT department of the Minister of Higher Education and Secondary Specialized Education, and also Professor Kamdamov from the Tashkent University, and they will talk about the higher education monitoring information system in Uzbekistan. So without further delay, I will have to give the floor to Mrs. Yan Li for the presenting the experience in China.
Okay, can I? Thank you. Okay. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Good evening from Beijing. Yes, I appreciate UNESCO for providing me this opportunity to share. And on behalf of Ms. Lian Li, I'm honored to share with you the experience of China's inmates. Maybe I will share maybe includes two parts. One is China's education statistics overview and our data-driven educational decision-making, especially our COVID-19 response in inmates and data. So from this slide, we can see China's Education Statistics Department was established in 1954, and now our MS covers more than 513,000 schools of all levels and types, and 290 million students, and over 20 million teaching and administrative staff. Yes, it's one of the department statistics with the broadest coverage and the most extensive type in China. So this diagram shows the process of the education statistics work system. From this, you can see every year from January to May, the Chinese Ministry of Education analyzed the data from the previous year and starts the work of this year. From June to August, the educational administrative departments assign tasks to schools level by level. And in September, school complete online data reporting. From October to December, the educational departments at all levels finished the data verification and reporting before the next cycle. So this figure shows the integrated service of the images such as the collection, release, and data application. So meanwhile, to ensure the quality of statistical data, we have done a group of work, which includes staff training and data verification in the whole process. So as for the data-driven educational decision-making, we have established the educational decision support system. So it's our EDSS, which connects the data resources on economic and international levels. It can help educational decision makers improve policy planning, assessing, and monitoring the educational system. We attach great importance to applying education statistic data, which may include 3 aspects. Yes, it's data release, monitoring, and warning, education planning. So we built a data release mechanism to report various results, including statistics reports, newsletters, overview, and also the annual report of the SDJ4. So, and in some cases, we use our EDSS to produce analyzed reports in multiple dimensions to help us to respond to educational policies and planning needs better and faster. So on the monitoring and early warning, through this system, we can grasp the actual state of education development in the country and provinces, dynamically monitor some key indicators, and provide a better databases for developing education plans in various places. So take the monitoring of class size as an example. In this figure, we can see the distribution of the junior high schools with an average class size of more than 56 students from multi-dimensions, such as urban and rural, private and public. Besides, we can realize the dynamic monitoring through the dashboard. Red area indicates problems, while the gray one indicates safety and being with the standard of the value. So also we attach great importance to doing international comparisons and analyze. The platform includes education development data from 127 countries worldwide, showing the comparison between China and different income groups of countries. So as for the educational planning, we try to use education, population, economic, and social data together to guarantee educational planning and lay a foundation for interplanet objective to educational resources well. We have released various results, including reports on educational needs and predictions of the school-age population. This helped us carry out our educational planning better and precisely. So, as for the COVID-19 response, since the outbreak, Chinese Ministry of Education has been required to delay the school opening of the spring semester in 2020. Schools all over China has been searching for suspended class ongoing learning during this period, and we use online education. So during this outbreak, our educational statistics process was not affected. Furthermore, based on the existing data, we also produced the data platform for the national education system during the COVID-19 outbreak to monitor the epidemic situation in the education system in real time. And some provinces also have their own real-time systems about COVID-19 outbreak impact on education. For example, and this is the Shanxi province's tracking system. From this, they can access relevant information from students more timely, and that's more targeted to help them. And during the outbreak, many online education platforms or systems were applied in the whole country. These platforms have produced a large amount of learning data, and we are exploring how to connect the data in these learning systems with education statistics data, so as to monitor and evaluate students' learning outcomes better. Besides, provinces and cities have also established some educational data platforms reflecting the features of regional education development. Their themes may include education quality monitoring, evaluation, school teaching management, and so on. They may try to use data more precisely to help local education decision-making. So, and the last in the end, we always hope that our MS will develop into an overall comprehensive and dynamic education management system in the future. We are also working hard to connect multiple platforms or other systems to maximize the value of the education statistical data. Meanwhile, we would like to learn from others, the international experience especially, and overcome the difficulty in dealing with the diverse learning environmentals. So yes, that's all. Thank you for your attention. That's our share.
Thanks a lot. This is really impressive. I'm personally thinking about the integration of information, but also I think it would be great if we could come back at one point on some aspect of the EMIS that you mentioned, in particular the monitoring of and the early warning of the situation, as well as provision of resources and switching to alternative education platform. I would like now to give the floor to Mrs. Leticia Miras for driving us into the experience of Argentina.
Thank you. Are you listening me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks UNESCO for the invitation. It's a big honor to me to represent my country and to share with you our experience during the last month. Argentina is a federal government system, and it's formed by 24 provinces. We have a population of 45,800,000, and we have 15,300,000 students and 1.5 million teachers. And we have 63,000 schools and 131 universities. We have a Consejo Federal de Educación, it's like a federal education council that defines the policies for the decentralized education systems, and the local governments oversee the federal policies enforcement. The National Educational Information System is made up of different types of service. Some of these are regularly updated, for instance, the National Catalog of Educational Institutions, while others are annually updated via census. The relevamiento anual is an annual census. It is the main source of statistical information. This methodology has been applied for over 25 years, providing the highest level of coverage. CINIDE, on the other hand, is a comprehensive digital education system whose objective is to achieve a regularly updated nominal register. It is made up of different modules. Worth mentioning, an education management information system developed by the National Ministry of Education and currently being used by 6 provinces. And the Base Nacional Homologada, which is made of nominal registers of students. This module is being developed during this year, 2021. In this context and with this information system, what were the requirements for education management information system during the pandemic? The requirement for our ministry was the amount of talents disengaged during the mandatory social isolation, the management of teacher vaccination schedule, and monitoring of contagion during the school reopening. And for these requirements, this requirement demanded the development of different tools. The first development was CINIDE Acompañar, a module and another module of CINIDE to register the engagement level of secondary students as measured by attendance and performance. Actual records amount to 2.3 million students, representing 16% completion. This requirement is the first of this kind as a national level. Then to address teachers and staff vaccination schedule, we designed an online form, the register of teachers and staff showing willingness to get the vaccine is shared with provincial authorities on a weekly basis. The register amounts to 250,000 records nowadays. The first and the last module is Cuidar Escuelas. This module was developed in cooperation with the Ministry of Health to aid in the epidemiological surveillance. Cuidar Escuelas register COVID-19 positive or suspected cases of students, teachers, and staff, and nominal registers personal information, date of notifications, and date of onset of symptoms. Data entry is in charge of each school. So, all the developments of these tools was motivated by the lack of nominal register of students and teachers, the lack of connectivity between different national systems, but most importantly, the lack of feasible information for decision making. While overcoming these challenges, Argentina managed to develop a productive education management information system with the following features: real-time information system for decision making, decentralized data entry, usable nominal register databases like secondary students and teachers and staff, and that is very important for us. We enforcement of information use and confidentiality best practices at local government level, and interconnectivity at nationwide level of the informational systems. If I could, I would share with you some of the developments or some of the tools that we have online. It is possible. I have 2 minutes more.
You are a little bit over time, but if it's only 1 minute, it's okay.
It's okay. I will share with you the links for the webs. It's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laetitia, for this impressive presentation. I really like the way you structure the different key moments which are key in programming, namely, student disengagement, but also teacher vaccine, and also monitoring of school reopening, including monitoring of contamination, which is at the center of a lot of debate currently. Linkages between school reopening, school open, and contamination from the school to the community, but also within the community. I guess we will come back on this later on. Now, can I give the floor to Mr. Abdul Hamid, Senior Education Specialist from the bank, who will drive us in EMIS during emergencies.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. Thank you, everyone. And first, I would like to thank UNESCO and the international partners in making and planning such event, and for continuing to bring attention to the importance of the data systems. I want to highlight more on the dimension of the EMIS during emergencies. And I want to highlight, as we are all realizing, that a resilient education system requires a strong data and information system. So this is really, now we are realizing it more than before. The COVID pandemic has challenged us all, especially in relation to continuity of operation to a very important social service, which is education. And I want to highlight experiences from the bank on ingredients for success during emergencies in relation to a resilient EMIS system that can support education during these hard times. The first one, I just want to highlight the importance of having the EMIS as a trusted system of reference, because this is very important for that, the country is looking at one source and everybody is looking at the same source, and all informations are official and reliable and accurate. So that's a very important thing. So if only we look at counts and we don't and estimates and all of that, this will not be that useful. But now we are realizing that actually capturing the most accurate data and the most detailed data is very important, especially in an emergency like this, to plan and to help in make estimates and projections and delivering special support. The second point, that populating that with crucial identifiers, as previous presenters mentioned, that this is crucial, that the identifiers at all levels are already there. So unique identifiers for all units of the system in terms of an institution, either a university or a school, or a support, an education support agency. So these can help. And also we found that it's very important to also reach the teachers and to make sure that teachers and professors are also easily to reach them and easily to coordinate with them and easily to identify their needs. Similarly for students and parents. The third one is about populating with multiple dimensions. So this is a very important thing, that is not counting on students and number of rooms and number of teachers, but it is having an integrated system is crucial, including the human resources, expertise, cataloged resources in terms of hard, soft technology, and also the level of capacity. And then the fourth one is linked to the MS is linked to other internal and external systems. So for example, we are realizing that it is very important that the MS is linked to the learning management system. As you see, especially in an environment we are delivering hybrid or online learning. Also link it to the testing services that are there, because you want to get important information that will be useful for the teaching and learning processes. Attendance, monitoring attendance, who is attending, who's participating in these things. These are very important to have. Who is supported and who needs support. All of this grading. And in terms of external, it is the health systems. It's very crucial now that we need to match the students with the health indicators and health services, and to know who's sick, who's not sick, who's with all of these, who's vaccinated, who's not vaccinated, who in terms of teachers and in terms of students. Also to monitor social services, social programs, and support. So these to be linked to the education management system is crucial, and have shown to be an ingredient for success of such efforts. And the fifth one is to have a system that it is easily customizable and expandable. So as we have seen that from time to time we need to create something quick, that and you will see that in the next presentation from my colleagues in Uzbekistan. So the system needs to have the legal standing in order to expand, and also to have the capacity, the ability to expand the system, and not to rely on external expensive sources in order to make the adjustments to the system, and also to have hardware capacity in order to make these things doable at the right time. And the sixth point is in relation to availability of local capacity in terms of technology, to run the system, to adjust the system, to report and communicate on of data and reports on the system, and maintain system security, because this is crucial. And also I would like to highlight the importance of training, how crucial it is at all levels. School leaders, and this pandemic has highlighted that to us, that everyone needs to know how to use the system. And so for that, training is crucial. I would like to highlight that this is, now when we talk about education management systems, we are not talking only about the schools, we are talking about the whole system, including universities. And the next slides will be presented about higher education, that also higher education has suffered during this time, and that a good education management system really can help in making the transition smooth and making this learning and teaching during the pandemic possible. Professor Rutger?
Yes, thank you very much for the information. I am Utker Hamdamov from Uzbekistan. I would like to give you or share some information about how is the developed and the implemented higher education management information system in the Uzbekistan higher educational institutions. Just a moment.
Good evening, dear colleagues. Now, during the pandemic, the higher education management information system was developed as a part of World Bank project, and was developed information system for online application submission to graduate programs, of higher educational institutions and information systems, of online application submission for student transfer and admissions. And during the pandemic, servers were purchased for 78 universities, and the data center was established for the ministry. Now the presentation was prepared together by Professor Hamdan Utkir and the national consultants of this project. Now they fully explain the capabilities of these systems and the challenges, the problem during the pandemic. And now welcome, Professor Hamdan.
Okay, thank you. Can I share my screen because I cannot control this presentation? Share it to the screen.
Hello, sir. I want to
I think somebody must to close the demonstration of the screen. In this case, I cannot demonstrate my screen.
Mr. Utkir, I invite you to say next, and the person in charge will share.
Okay.
You have the end now. You can now share your screen if you want.
Okay, thank you. My name is Utkir Hamdamov. I am national consultant of the HEMIS information system. I would like to share you some experience how we developed the higher education management information system in the pandemic period. How is the adopted the information system and meet to the needs of the students and the teachers during the COVID emergency. This higher education management information system project developed with support of the World Bank group. The project title is Modernizing of Higher Education Project in Uzbekistan. Project subtitle is the development and implementation of the higher education management information system in higher education of the Uzbekistan. Project duration is from 2018 and 2022. Main project stakeholders is PMT of World Bank, Ministry of Higher and Secondary Special Education of the Republic of Uzbekistan, and other ministry and the state bodies of the Republic of Uzbekistan, also high educational institutions of the Republic of Uzbekistan. This higher education management information system development project for the Uzbekistan aims to strengthen higher education system, managerial capacity, improve the education quality, labor market relevance, and the learning environments of higher education institutions. The HEMIS information system mostly consists of four general subsystems. The first of them administrative, next one is the academic, scientific, and the financial information management subsystems for HEMIS. The HEMIS also can provide services which is planning and the organization of educational, methodological, scientific, and the financial activities of the universities, providing information services to the students, teachers, and other participants in the higher educational process, organization of the electronic platform for interaction between users of the system, teachers and the students, and also increase ministry's capacity to respond to regular and ad hoc education data requests from the external parties by using HEMIS. Now the HEMIS information system developed as three main information system. First of them, HEMIS for the higher educational institutions. Because the World Bank support more than 80 higher education institutions in Uzbekistan with the ICT units, some servers, and for this servers already installed and launched the HEMIS for the higher education institutions. And in the ministry launched the HEMIS Central Chemis Data Warehouse. This is supported by the Chemis for Ministry Information System. And the third one is the Chemis for CISCA. This is information system for state inspection to collect some information and the data of the education for the decision-making process and for evaluation of the rating of higher educational institutions. For the information system, the access is organized via the internet and the intranet, web-based access, and all of the university can to feed data to the central Chemis to collect all of the information concerning the educational process in higher education. This is a general information system structure. If you see the information system, this divided 4 parts. First of them, administrative information management part. Next one is the education information management, and the third one is the research or scientific information management, and the last one is the financial information management subsystems. The main users of this information system divided to 2 parts. The first of them, internal users, and next one is the external users. Internal users, this is administration, professors and the students of the universities, also some parents of the students. And external users of this information system is the state bodies, ministries, and some business parts. This is information system already integrated with other information system of the Republic of Uzbekistan to information exchange about educational process. Before the development of the Chemis information system, defined 4 categories of the higher education indicators. This is administrative information indicators, approximately 30 indicators, and next one is the academic information indicators. There is 18 indicators, and then scientific information indicators, 13 indicators, and financial information indicators is 5. This is under this information indicators developed the higher education management information system, and this system provides the ministry officials to collect the whole information about the educational process of higher educational institutions. If you see
speed up, please. You can speed up because of time, please.
Okay, okay.
And it will be great. I mean, you have 1 minute left. It would be great if you could focus on the COVID experience, please.
Okay, yes. Now this information system is established in more than 120 universities. And then you can see the students and professor enrollment in this system, bachelor program and under the master program and the PhD programs of. And in the Chemis is collected some data from the data classifiers. There is more than 60 data classifiers organizations and more than 20 registers and more than 62 another type of the information reports and statistics provided to the higher education institutions. In the COVID pandemic period, to adapt the system to meet the needs of the students and the teachers, some functionality of the Chemis system is expanded. So we add some additional functionality to the Chemis when the students and the teachers in the pandemic period can to use some functionality, for example, the interaction teacher and the student and the data exchange, deliver the lecture for the students and provide some teaching materials and so on. The first of them, the course content management subsystem for the Chemis, all of the additional develop. And the second one is student knowledge assessment subsystem for Chemis, because the education is changed from the face-to-face to online education. In the online process needs some tools how to assist the knowledge of the students. In this case, the Chemis we attach the additional module of the student knowledge assessment subsystem. And the next one is this online contract registration and the generation subsystem, because all of the students must pay the tuition fee for the teaching. In this case, we must provide contract for the payment, some documents. In this case, included the Chemis online contract registration system. And the two additional information system also developed for the organize the online application applying process for the graduate schools, and the next one is the online application management information system for the student transfer. Because the after the finishing the undergraduate, some part of the students goes to the graduate school. In the pandemic period, in lockdown situation, all of the schools is closed. In this case, we provide the follow for all students over the country online application process to use using this online application management information system for graduate schools. And the next one, every end of every education year, some students want to change the university and to change the programs, and some students change the university from the foreign countries to the local universities. Because in the pandemic period, some part of the students cannot go to abroad to another country to continue the education. In that part, most of the students ask to change or transfer education or change the university from the foreign countries and so for local university. In this case, also launched the student transfer online application information management system. There is some example of the online application management information system for graduate school. This information system we can to use the via internet. There is applicants, there is database of data, and some responsible person who can to distribute the applications, and some commissions who can to examine the documents and applications of the students. There is some statistics by the regions. Totally more than 77,000 applications applied by using this information system in the pandemic period. Now is the little short information about the student transfer online application management information system in the pandemic period to give the opportunities for the students apply some applications to change the university.
But you have to stop, please.
Okay. This is one of the last slides. All of the students can to provide two kind of applications for the transfer and for the readmission. And some commissions can to consider these applications. There is some statistics for this student transfer online application management information system used in the 114 universities, all connected 16 ministries and other state bodies, and in the pandemic period, more than 33,000 applications submitted to this information system, and more than 40,000 applications were examined and accepted by commissions for student transfer and readmission. And this is one of the last slide, the future development of the Chemis. Now we start to integrate the Chemis information system with other information systems that are used in the country. One of them, single interactive state services portal. Next one is the single social protection register supported by Ministry of Finance, and the next one is information system for state organizations. This is financial information system of the Ministry of Finance, and the next one is unified national labor system. This is supported by the Ministry of Labor, and the last one is the geoinformation system of Tashkent, supported by Tashkent region. This is 5 information systems where the Chemis now is the integrated. This is for our information. I finish it. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Professor. That was a quite extensive presentation, and I think we will not have the possibility to go through the question and answer session because we are already a little bit over time, but I would like to just give 2-3 points of summary. First of all, we've seen through the presentation. I'm just talking about the country presentation, that key element, I would say 2 key elements for education information system to be able to respond to the crisis situation. First of all, is the integration of data system. I mean, we saw both from the Chinese experience, but also from the Uzbekistan experience, and also the Argentina experience, that in order to respond to those crises, we need to integrate data beyond education and take other data sources. And I think your last slide was really key on that, Professor. Second thing is the adaptability. Both the 3 experiences mentioned, the necessity to go beyond the traditional EMIS. So we saw additional data collection from Argentina, for instance, focusing on student disengagement, teachers vaccination, and also reopening, including the necessity to monitor transmission, contamination. And the necessity to have something that is, supported by the technology with real-time monitoring and decentralized data collection, and also from the Uzbekistan experience, other focus. So meaning that there is no one size fits all, but a really different focus, probably due also to the fact that it is related to higher education, focusing on the student, registration, transfer, graduation, application. So really adaptability and integration of data sources. We are not able to go in the different question, but as a follow-up, I will just like to remind the question. I mean, I see 5 questions that were proposed. The first one was about facilitation of the MIS for acquisition of data in culturally sensitive population, which is really critical for equity purpose. Another question was related to the monitoring of information such as global citizenship and student learner participation in school governance. How do you measure that? Then learner performance in times of mandatory social distancing. How was it managed? Then a final question, which is for an organization like us, really key is, we need to enhance the use of data and the dissemination of data. So we also need to raise awareness on data literacy for the first users. How can we make sure that data provided by EMIS are properly understood and used for the planning and monitoring at the various level of the education service delivery. So, I mean, unfortunately, over time we will not have the possibility to go in a series of question and answer and to give back the floor to the presenters. But time constraints, so I'm giving the floor back to GC for the next session. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicolas, for your excellent moderation and facilitation of this session, which I found very interesting. So let's now go to the next session, which is more focusing on experience sharing and the lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis, but from the more global and regional perspective. Now, before inviting the moderator of the next session, I'd like to remind the need of, for the discipline, because especially when we have this kind of online seminar, discipline is the key. You have to keep the time because there are many others who can contribute, and also because you can use the chat room for Q&A, and you can share your PPT, so there is no need to present everything. I'd like to invite also those who are going to speak to turn on your video each time. So please, I'd like to reiterate that we need to keep the time assigned to each of us. So I'd like to now introduce the moderator of the next session, Mr. Tao Zhan, Director of the International the director of the UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education, IITE, which is located in Moscow. So before joining UNESCO IITE as director in 2017, he had served as the president of Shandong University and also Jilin University. And he was also director of Education Management Information Center of the Ministry of Education in China. So Tao, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, GC. Can you hear me? Thank you again for the kind introduction and the very important reminder regarding time control. As a mathematician myself, I will be very carefully counting the minutes. We are going to have 45 minutes. Now it's Paris time is 2:54. And welcome everyone to the second session, focusing on the regional and global experience sharing, especially from the perspective of UNESCO and its partners. And in this session, we have the honor to have three speakers, one from UNESCO and two from UNESCO's close global partners, namely GPE and UNICEF. And each of the three speakers will have 10 minutes for presentation. And after that, we are going to have about 10 minutes for question and answer. And I have a colleague in Paris, Ms. Samaya. She will helping me collecting the questions from the chatbot. As the second option, all the participants can raise your hand during the question and answer, and I will give you the floor to the ones who have questions. So without any further delay, it's my pleasure to invite the first speaker. She is Ms. Margaret Irwin, education economist from GPE. The screen is yours. I will give you a reminder in the minutes number 9. We have the last minutes. Please go ahead.
That sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you to UNESCO for supporting this session and for starting this very timely conversation. What I'm going to be talking a little bit about today is what we at GPE have seen a host of countries seeking support for through the crisis, through our COVID grants. If we can move to the next slide, at GPE, what is critical to us is building resilient systems. When we talk about resilient systems, we mean systems that can respond and continue to function. And really, we know this pandemic was a real challenge to resilience. There's a high degree of uncertainty. And in uncertainty, data is our best friend. We need strong data systems. We need accurate, timely, real-time, reliable, usable data. Not only to be able to respond, but also to be able to see what's working, what isn't working, and to inform future responses. What we also recognized in challenging times like these is that there's a real need to prioritize. There's a need to decide what is most important, which groups need to be prioritized, which outcomes need to prioritize, and how do we decide what to invest on. And again, data and evidence is central to that. The challenge that we see is that many of the MS systems across our partner countries are unable to adapt, unable to use the existing evidence and build new approaches in real time. And that's a lot of what we saw requests for assistance with. One thing that was quite encouraging is that across most of our countries, we did see a real strong focus on equity. So in the grants that were applied for with GPE funds, there was a focus on vulnerable and marginalized populations. If I could get to the next slide. Basically, we very quickly at GPE put into place an accelerating funding facility. Most of our partner countries were able to access the funds quite quickly. We had 66 applications for $467 million. Of those, a little less than half, around 40%, actively requested funding for data interventions, and that's going to be my focus today. Of course, I need to qualify and caveat and to note that in order to apply for funds, countries needed to have a response plan for COVID in place. The response plan might have included a data element, and it might be that that was not GPE funded. I'm only focusing today on the GPE funded components. And what we saw in terms of requests for data funding for data interventions was a real variety of requests. Most of them, though, definitely indicated deficiencies in that countries were not ready to deal with this. So, for example, we saw colleagues in Burundi wanting to identify a new technology for instant data collection. Then we also saw other countries wanting to build evidence around what was and was not working. So, for example, not part of EMIS per se, but there was development of a survey instrument in Zambia to see are radio lessons actually really working. And just as kind of a foretaste, I want to say GPE also funded a consortium of partners, UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank, to focus on bringing together evidence across global and regional activities. So it's the early days yet, we're still building this, but we're looking to see what comes out of when we take a bird's eye view across all the pieces, what really have we learned and what can we do better? Next slide, please. So just very quickly, sorry, that's just a quick sense of where our countries were. You can see very heavily African. And then the following slide, please, to basically just note that what we anticipated seeing was that we would see a need to track students and teachers and monitor reopening to schools, to address needs for vulnerable population, information from EMIS needed about aiding transition, and then also support for learning. Next slide. When we kind of collate what actually was funded, it was quite a diverse set of requests. So what we really saw, like I said earlier, coming out probably most heavily was the need for better information on marginalized and vulnerable populations and the need for better data to target appropriate interventions. And so again, we aren't working on the ground. We're a funding agency rather than an implementing agency. But looking at what requests were coming through, it suggests that there wasn't good information on those groups to begin with, and they weren't good tracking systems. So that's a real area for support. There was also a lot of move towards computerization, digitization, a request to have alternative modalities of data collection that I think were required as a consequence of the distance nature of the pandemic. We saw a little use of, or a little request for intersectoral data collection. So WASH data, for example, came up. And then also what was encouraging is that some of our countries were thinking about long-term capacity building and training. So not just about the immediate reactive response, but also proactively thinking about how systems could be leveraged to think more about creating a sustainable and resilient system. I guess one thing I kind of want to pause at this slide and just note is that, like I say, what I'm talking about today is primarily what was in funding proposals for GPE grants. We looked in parallel at country response plans for COVID-19. And what was kind of interesting, it's a bit hard to put numbers to this, but the quality of the plans was very variable across countries. And often we would find that there would be requests for funding of data-related issues that were not explicitly reflected in the response plans. And that, I think, is really an important thing to bear in mind as well, that we think about data both as an input and an output. We need data to plan well, but we also need to plan for good or better data. And so thinking about the link between those two things, the funding requests, what actually people really wanted to fund when it got down to asking for financial resources versus what was immediately reflected in those plans was sometimes a little divergent. So it's a useful area to think about for future in terms of future preparedness. If I can skip to the next slide, just to give a very, very quick taster of some of the kinds of things that our countries sought funding for. I'll run through 3 quick country cases, only a minute each. So I would love it if there are colleagues from these countries who can speak a little more to how the implementation has gone. But if I start with Bangladesh, Bangladesh came to GPE. Next slide, please. The focus there, you'll see on the left-hand side, I had what the funding request was from a country. On the right-hand side, what was in the country response plan. So the funding request was really focused less on the kind of immediate response, more on medium and longer-term attempts to bring children back to school, with a specific focus on at-risk children. I think what was also interesting when we dug into the Bangladesh response plan was that there was, in the education sector, also recognition of the long-term importance of developing a health tracking system that could interface with the education data. So that kind of intersectoral linkage comes through very clearly in this particular case. If I can skip to the next one, to Kenya. Again, there was here a focus on some kind of intersectoral pieces. What was really interesting is that the Kenya funding request came through and it had a strong focus on strengthening an existing program. So it wasn't entirely reactive. It was thinking about what was already working. It seemed to be an opportunity to make the school meals program function better. And we all know, of course, that kind of social protection element of school feeding programs is critical, and using the pandemic and the pandemic funding as an opportunity to make that work better, I thought was really encouraging. I saw in the chat box questions about how do we kind of make sure that all levels and all levels of system management.
Sorry for the interruption.
Sure. No problem. Sure. That all levels of system management are not just the high-level policymakers, but also the teachers are actually able to use data right at the school level. And the Kenya request really did seem to have a strong focus on making sure that all levels were able to use the data. And there was a targeted approach with the data to really make sure that areas that were lagging in re-enrollment based on the data would be flagged and highlighted, that the head teachers of particular schools would be able to account for missing pupils. And it really did seem to me to be a very kind of multi-level piece. I think in the interests of time, I will stop there. I did have an example on Maldives as well, but
maybe you can share during the question and time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's an exciting presentation. Yes, indeed. Good data, accountable data could make the education system more resilient. Well, good data depends on good EMIS system. So that's why we are gathering here and talking about EMIS. And now it's my pleasure to invite the second speaker, Mr. Alassane Ouedraogo. He is from another UNESCO's close global partner, UNICEF. He is from the Middle East and North Africa regional office. He himself, Mr. Alassane, is a very experienced expert in EMIS system. So now I give the screen to you, and 10 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you for the moderator. My name is Alassane Ouedraogo. I'm working for UNICEF. I want to thank UNESCO for providing such opportunity for talking about how do you reimagine EMIS futures. Next slide, please. Okay, my presentation will be around 3 points. The first one is to be touched based on overview of integrated EMIS management information system. covering all the sectors and also looking at the data gap emerging from the COVID-19 experience, and also see to what extent initiative that we took place in MENA was about addressing those challenges. Next slide, please. The first part is to say that across the MENA region, the MS system at different level in terms of capacity, in terms of maturity. If you take some criteria around the statistical infrastructure, the government commitment to data, the coverage, the data fragmentation issues, we say that we have a three typology. First is the basic education MS system, and the intermediate MS system, and the self-sustained MS system. If you want to see the ideal situation here to have an integrated information management system ranging from human resource management, student information system, pedagogical activities, information system, infrastructure, knowledge, content and learning management system, if you want to link to hybrid learning process, and also see the cross-sectoral aspect on the social services delivery information system. If you're looking for meal, you're looking for social protection, and also have a financial system and administrative system. This is to give an overview, and this one summarizes what has been said so far for the previous speakers on the first session. Next, please. Across the MENA region, there have been, during COVID time, several attempts to provide a solution to the school closure, meaning that we have the hybrid mode of delivering, teaching and learning, combining in-person and also remote learning in all forms. You have seen that if there's a kind of a combination of a high-tech, low-tech, and low solutions, combining offline and online, TV and radio and takeaway. There was an attempt from by UNICEF to estimate how many kids were not covered by any form of those remote learning platform. And it has been estimated 40% of the school population in MENA was not reached by any form of distance learning. This raises a big question, and how do we measure those reach and also make sure that the learning is taking place on those remote learning modalities, and the effort that the government have put in place to bridge the gaps. Next slide, please. And we got a kind of a reflection within the MENA region and involving some other actors, UN agencies and local actors also to see what could be the new emerging data we need to be collecting, and also to reflect on the MS system to cover the ongoing and maybe the future education delivery system. One will be around the reach. We need to see, okay, what will be the coverage? What kind of new data we need to come up to integrate in the MS system to see who will have access to devices, the software, who have access to learning opportunity, access also to electricity, internet connectivity, and also try to come up with some information to inform the education response in terms of engagement, participation. How do we monitor also the engagement of the teachers through those hybrid learning process? And more importantly, is learning taking place with all those response provided by the government? What will be the quality assurance mechanism? What kind of data we need to be collecting to be able to see that what we are providing either specifically on the remote learning platforms or hybrid combining in person alternatively, how they will be able to track, and how effective are those response to inform the Ministry of Education how to move forward. And we see that we need a lot of data to be integrated in the MS system. And these three dimensions also have been considered in the way we need to move forward in terms of the future MS system. Next slide, please. Okay, in the MENA region, to address the previous questioning that we have raised on the slide, is to come up with a framework who can help the Ministry of Education and some toolkits to monitor remote distance learning in the MENA. And we got some financial support from the GPA. Thanks to GPA, this is the platform to say that GPA has supported us in terms of coming with a kind of a public good. And the framework needs to address some fundamental questions. Who are the kids are not reached, or are at risk not being reached by any form of those remote learning? where are they? That's a very important thing for us to try to understand the locations and why they did not be able to reach by any form of remote learning. If the ministry is moving forward to have a hybrid system, we need to rely on understanding why some kids are not reached, so we can provide some response. And we need also, more importantly, to see what will be the change in terms of learning on those kids. Next slide, please. Okay, the purpose of this framework is to come up with a layout of a foundation for improving national capacity to generate the critical data needed by the country themselves. That's a very more focus, and our target population is the Ministry of Education. And ready to have a statistical system and data collection system will have be able to adjust themselves very quickly based on the new data needs and a new data set based on the emerging context. And also to provide a guideline to establish and maintain a kind of a new data set, or new indicators, because the pandemic has said that the need to come up for new data sets, so we can be able to judge to what extent the Ministry of Education is providing the right response to the kids. And also, we need to see to what extent we can provide interaction between the Ministry of Education, how to collaborate and how to incorporate those remote mechanisms in place. Next slide, please. Okay, the framework is coming back with some scope, and that is the framework we need to give us some the guidance process, and we need to have a planning and monitoring evaluation for remote learning in terms of guidelines, how to set up goals and indicators, and we need also to be able to provide some set of data collection instruments, some question bank that the ministry need to build on how to improve the existing data collection system. And we need to target the Ministry of Education, the school, the teacher, the parent, and the students. And more importantly, we need to go beyond the traditional mode of collecting the data from EMIS to incorporate some sampling process. So some critical data need to be sample-based, and we need to be guided on that. And if you move forward, that the ministry needs to be put in place some learning management system, some platform. Those platforms need, from the conceptual perspective, to be able to embed some data and statistical capacity lens, so they can move forward in terms of generating data feeding to the MES system. Next slide, please. Okay, now in terms of activity, we're expecting to finalize the framework by June. We already have a draft, and the dissemination will take place among the country by September. And we have selected some pilot countries, Yemen, Sudan, and we're still in discussion with some of them. And the framework needs also to be extended to ROSA. This is a partnership with ROSA. This is South Asia. And we need also to be able to see how do we build the capacity of Ministry of Education and phase approach how to implement this framework moving forward. Next slide, please. Can you load it at once, please? And this process has been the consultative and also participatory approach. We also consulted the UNESCO workflow program, all the actors within the MENA regions. And also we need to see how do we build synergy so we avoid duplicating effort and also come up with some public good with of standards to be used by the Ministry of Education move forward. Next slide. Okay, learning from what we have as the MES in the project in the MENA, there's a key element is coming back to what has been presented so far. We have some issues around unclarity visions and buy-in of the Ministry of Education, capacity issue on how to integrate information, and also how to make sure that the legal framework is supported to have the sustainability of MES project across the region. Last slide, and I'll be over, please. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to provide some answer if there's any questions.
Thank you so much. It's perfectly on time, and congratulations for the excellent work achieved in the MECLIS and North Africa region. It's really exciting to learn that MES there supports not just the decision making, but also learning and teaching at the school level as well. Thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to invite the last speaker from UNESCO. It will be a mini team from UNESCO UIS, the Institute for Statistics. And it will be led by Dr. Silvia Montoya, the director of UIS, and joined together by one of her team members, Mr. Salanja Sato, Mr. Salinger Sato. And when we talk about numbers, data, and UIS, I think it's the star and the eye of UNESCO and for every one of us. And all these statistics, the data, the numbers come from the team led by Dr. Sylvia. Now I give the floor to you, my colleague, and you have 10 minutes together with Mr. Sato.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, dear friends. It's always a pleasure to be with you and also to talk about the statistics that is the center at the key of our work and our effort. We would like to share some of the findings that are helping us to understand better the management systems. We have been systematically following a process, and this is part of an effort that the UIS is doing in terms of understanding the reason for investment and a consumer's or buyer's guide, as we used to call that, to provide guidance about how to measure an operational guide for measuring SDG 4 indicators using EMIS. But also we have actually asked a research question, very important to understand what the current management system at the country level are really doing in this moment, what kind of information they are collecting. And I do think that this is actually bringing some light and actually totally coherent with some of the findings that the colleague has been mentioning from GPE and from UNICEF. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is a coverage that we have done with a very short metadata survey that we have implemented last year with a collaboration in Africa with also the colleagues from ADEA. We have been covering these points. The data recording unit is very important in statistics to identify the statistical unit. Is the school, is a teacher, is a student, and for us it's very important to understand who. The data management platform, how are the countries collecting the data, the collection mode, the use of a school, students and teachers ID and how they have been actually managed through time, how they're talking to each other in one moment in time, but also how much they are changing over time, and if it's possible to make long-term series using the same IDs, and who is responsible to run these IDs in the ministries of education and or in government. And the historical data is key to understand trends, and also how development partners, how we're helping as international community and the ones who can actually have the financial possibility to invest in countries, and to what extent we're helping, and in some of the cases are actually overlapping on our efforts to help the countries. So if we can go to the next slide, please. This is a very quick, and for the sake of time, we're going just to run a quick snapshot to say that we have been actually sent a questionnaire to 180 countries almost, and we have collected for more than 100, and the team is still collecting extra data for the ones who haven't not replied, but we have a very good regional representation that is allowing us to make inferences and conclusions and to be statistically representative for what we're going to say in terms of the trends and emerging trends that are coming from the data. If we can go to the next slide, please. Here we have the first slide, and this is one of the snapshots. I really invite you to go to our microsite and to find the documents, because you are actually going to find very interesting information that has been actually in the team, has been led internally by the colleague Shailendra that is here with us. Is that the management platform that we have at the regional level, we have in a very good case, a number of platforms that are developed by the countries themselves. We also have some other software or that has been actually implemented, that there has been the StatEduc that in some moment was actually sponsored by the UIS, the EDASYS and some open EMIs. Use of Excel is also quite common in some regions, especially in the Pacific. We have found that an important group of the countries in the region are actually using this platform. If we can go, please, to the next slide. We also could see the data, the mode of the data collection. In some of the cases, we have various systems prevailing, because the countries are actually using paper, using electronic mode, or using online interfaces. But in some cases, you use one method for one level, and then they use the other ways of data collection for the other levels. And if we can go to the next slide, we're going to start to have some kind of a snapshot about the statistical units and how the data is collected. We can see here that at the school level is the information that is most commonly collected at the country level. It doesn't mean that they collect exactly the same variables, but this is historically the data that for tradition over years, and I will say decades and eventually centuries in some countries, is information that classically has been collected at the very aggregate level about some characteristic of the schools. When we turn to teachers, is the information that is coming in a much a little bit more difficult to actually to find in the systems. In some of the region is really having a kind of a slow coverage, and then we see that the data at the student level, at the level of actually at the granularity of the student, is really very difficult to find in some regions, and we see that only a quarter of the countries in Africa, for instance, are collecting data at the student level, at the individual student level, that is allowing to make actually connections and interoperate and to identify different services, not only the educational service, but some other services that are very important, especially to the wake of and the outbreak of the COVID, and the fact that there are some other services that need to be delivered, and most importantly, health and nutrition. We found that this identification, as the systems are progressing through time to have information at the individual student level, this is kind of a very rich source of information in terms of how it helps us to understand what is happening at the country level. If we can go to the next slide, please. We're going to have one of the most interesting points, just speaking on the issue of student IDs. This is really very important identification if we want to understand about nutrition, about health, and also about learning. We really need to have information that if we want to follow up, if we want to establish systems that are allowing us to identify early dropouts, or we want to follow up on learning, we really need to have an identification at the individual level. We're finding that the responsibilities are a little bit split in many of the countries, and in some of the cases they are changing also, as well as you will find in the report from year to year, and in some of the cases even with the school ID, for instance, exists, they are changing and they have 6 or 7 different ones. In this case of the students, we see that the student ID is generated within the Ministry of Education for a good percentage of the countries, and in other ones is generated outside, that is allowing to connect the different services and social services, especially that are related to the delivery of the educational service, that is not only related to education, but we know for the most vulnerable and risk population, we really need to collect and to have a holistic approach to support the permanence and the learning in the educational process. So this is a very rich information, and you could see in the report about the historical trends that are, if you find very low coverage of a student and the individual ID on a snapshot, is going to be not surprising to find that these percentages are really decreasing when you try to establish trends and to try to establish how they have been generated over time. If we can go to the next slide, please.
2 minutes for both of you. Sorry, I was told to stop.
Thank you. No, that really, I'm going to take these 2 minutes, and that's all. Regarding the classification of a country, as we have been working and we're happy to address questions, and Shailendra will check on that, we have come to a classification. What are the good news? The good news is, according to the issues that we have seen, interoperability, a school, a student ID, and some other information, we could see that at least more than half of the countries have actually replied to our survey, and that are representative at the global and at the regional level, are having really good or very good system of a management system. But we also know that then on the other side, looking at the other part of the half empty part of the glass, a little bit less than half of them are also struggling and really having a room for improvement. And this is actually our call and our work to do, is to try to see how we uplift and move everybody to the next stage and to the next level of development in their system. And if we can go to the final slide, I do think. Thank you. These are the recommendations, and just using the 2 minutes, and collecting real-time data from a school is really one of the challenges. And we see that the EMIS system to some extent are constrained to a more classical approach, where the combination of sources of information is not really taken on board. And we see that this is a really difficult challenge now during the COVID-19, where it has been clearly highlighted by the colleagues of GP and UNICEF. We need to have different data, and this data needs to be part of this system. It has to be expanding. The operationalization of the individual level, not only at the student, but at the teacher, is really needs to take example from other sectors, especially from health and from other information system, and to really work a little bit harder into combining these different sources of information. The institutional individual capacity certainly is one of the areas that really calls for our attention and for investment. The coordination of investment on EMIS, as you will see, and you can see in the report, they really have a room for coordinating better on our efforts as development partners, and to collaborate in the knowledge sharing platform regarding EMIS. The UIS has actually gone one step forward last year and just launched the EMIS microsite. We have their questionnaire. We have examples in our operational guide that are not coming from the UIS team, are coming from countries, and we have tried to reflect as best as possible those examples about that bank that the colleague from UNICEF was actually mentioning. So exchanging our experiences, our knowledge, and what happened with the system, including the software, is something that is helping all of us to move forward. And then finally is upgrading the existing EMIS with new technologies. This is definitely something that has been very much taken on board now with the COVID-19, but we are looking forward to see that this is progressing over time. So thank you so much to everybody. Thank you to Shailendra, has led on our team, and he's going to be happy to take on questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Silvia. Unfortunately, we have no more time, and maybe 1 or 2 minutes for Mr. Salandra. If you may, please go ahead, 1 or 2 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much. I think so. If there is a question, there's a, it's not only, the system is one or other. Some country has a multiple system also. That's why if some country is using half of the schools from paper and half of the schools, the data are collected from the electronic version. That's why I think it's not like one to other. If you see, sometimes it doesn't go more than it goes more than 100%. So you have to interpret that way. Thank you very much. Over to you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you to both of you and to all the speakers. I was told that I have to stop now. I give the floor back to back to GC for him to wrap up and giving closing remark. Back to you, GC, please.
Thank you, Tao, for the efficient moderation of this session, which is very interesting. Fortunately, I don't have much time to summarize what we discussed. Just a few points. I think we started today with opening speeches which are around the critical role of data, and also for building to support recovery and building more resilient education systems in the context of reimagining the future education. And also we heard about